Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're doing a vampire deck profile. So I'm really excited this week guys, because this deck is one of my favorite zombie decks in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a really amazing deck that can summon out some crazy powerful cards and make use of all of the generic zombie support that we've been given throughout the years. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name in the description of every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 2 copies of Vampire Scarlet Scourge. I just feel like 2 is the perfect number for what we're playing in this deck. It's a really good card because if this card is normal or special summon, you can pay 1,000 life points to target a vampire monster in the graveyard except another copy of itself and special summon that monster, but it can't attack this turn. And you can also only use each effect of this card once per turn, and at the end of the battle phase, if this card did destroy a monster by battle, you can special summon it from the graveyards to your field, which is a great effect, basically turning your opponent's monsters into vampires. We then play a single copy of Vampire Voivode. I just play a single copy of Voivode in my build currently until we get the new support, but this card is a really good one of right now. I did play it at 2 and it worked really well at 2, but I have since bumped it down to 1. But what this card does is if this card is normal summon, you can target 2 monsters in your opponent's graveyard and special summon those monsters to your field in defense position, but their effects are negated. And when a monster effect is activated while a monster's with the same name is in the graveyard's quick effect, you can negate the activation of that monster effect. And if a monster is special summoned from your opponent's graveyard, you contribute 2 monsters to special summon this card from your graveyard, which is a great effect just to be able to constantly recur your copy of Voivode. We then play a single copy of Vampire Shadow. Vampire Shadow is when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon a dark vampire monster from your hand or deck except another copy of itself, and if you do, you can only use that monster, or you can only attack with that monster for the rest of the turn, and this card cannot be used for XZ summon of an XZ monster except for the Dark XZ monster, which is totally fine because we're pretty much only playing Dark XZs anyway. We then play a single copy of Vampire Fraulein, which is one of the best generic zombie monsters in the entire game that has an ability to basically boost your monster's attack points up when they battle an opponent's monster by paying increments in 100 all the way up to 3,000 attack points, which is a great effect. I love that effect of this card, and she even special summons herself to your side of the field, which is a great effect. We then play a single copy of Vampire Sorcerer. Vampire Sorcerer is a one-up to me because if this card is in your possession, is sent to your graveyard by your opponent's card either by battle or by card effect, you can add 1 dark vampire or a vampire spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and you can also banish this card from the graveyard, and then 1 dark vampire monster can be normal summoned this turn without tributing, which comes in pretty handy with your copy of Scarlet Scourge. We then play 3 copies of Vampire Retainer. This card is one of the best searchers in the entire game, and I love what it does for this deck, that if this card is special summon, you can pay 500 life points to add a vampire spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and if this card is in your graveyard, you can send a vampire from your hand or face up from your field to the graveyard to special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field, which will get you that search, which is a awesome effect just to give you that additional search and a special summon of a monster that you can use for link summoning or synchro summoning. We then play 3 copies of Vampire Familiar. Vampire Familiar is pretty much the same as Retainer, which is really awesome, but this card lets you search monsters instead of spells and traps, which is a great effect with your copies of Retainer. Basically, you have the ability to search any vampire spell and any vampire monster with both of these cards. I love them at 3. I sometimes bounce them back down to 2, depending on the build, but right now I'm really liking 3 copies of each of these. We then play, for the generic zombie support, we're playing 2 copies of Doom King Ballardrot. Doom King Ballardrot is one of the best zombie boss monsters in the entire game, if not the best zombie monster in the entire game. But basically what it does is during the standby phase, if a face-up card is in the field spell zone and this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon it back to your side of the field. And then when a zombie monster's effect is activated, you can quick effect apply one of these effects to negate that effect or banish 1 monster on the field or in the graveyard, which is a great effect to be able to just immediately negate it or get something off the field. I love this card as a 2-of, and it helps out a lot in this deck. We then play a single copy of Necro World Banshee. Necro World Banshee serves searches our powerful field spell Zombie World, and she's basically here because you're going to use her with your Unizombie to send her to the grave, banish her, and then activate Zombie World, which is the big play with this card. We then play 3 copies of Unizombie, which is one of the best normal summons in any zombie deck that you can activate the ability to send a card from your hand to the graveyard and then increase the level of a monster on the field's level by 1, or you can send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard to increase a monster on the field's level by 1 as well, and you can activate both of those effects per turn, which is a great effect just to be able to give you a Foolish Burial and give you a tuner monster to go into some really awesome plays. We then play 2 copies of Glow Up Bloom. Glow Up Bloom helps out the deck because it helps you special summon out your vampire monsters and your Doom King, because it has the ability that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from the graveyard to add a level 5 or higher zombie monster from your deck to your hand, but if you control Zombie World, you can actually special summon it instead of adding it to hand, which is pretty good, especially with your copy of Scarlet Scourge or your copy of Doom King. We then play 2 copies of Mizuki. Mizuki is basically here because you can banish it from the graveyard to be able to special summon any zombie monster back from the graveyard, which is a really awesome effect, and a single copy of Gozuki because during the main phase you can send a zombie monster from the deck to the graveyard, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish a zombie monster from your graveyard, except another copy of itself, to special summon a zombie from the hand, which helps out a lot, especially with all of your vampire monsters just about being high levels, with cards like Scarlet Scourge, Voivode, and your copy of Frolin being easily special summoned out by this effect. You never want to special summon out your copy of Shadow with this effect because Shadow will not get its effect off because it has to be normal summon. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion helps out a lot in zombie decks because it helps you get monsters out on your side of the field, like your Sea Monster and your copy of the level 2 tuner monster that's a fusion, which helps out a lot to be able to go in for additional plays, which is why we also play 3 copies of Ready Fusion. Ready Fusion is a great card in this deck as well, because you can combo this card with just about any zombie monster to go into link plays, go into your synchro plays, and go into really awesome plays overall. We then play 2 copies of Vampire Desire. Vampire Desire is a really neat card, and I really like it in this deck because it has the ability to activate one of these effects when you activate this card to target a face-up monster that you control, send a vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different level from that monster, and if you do, the targeted monster's level becomes that monster's level that you sent from the deck to the graveyard, basically letting you level manipulate your vampires so you can go into XZ monsters. And it also has the ability to target a vampire monster in your graveyard, send a monster you control to the grave, and if you do, special summon the target to basically let you change out your monsters on your side of the field to get additional vampires back to your side of the field, which helps out a lot. We then play 3 copies of Vampire Domain. I love this card in this deck. This card is one of the best vampire support cards we have ever gotten, and it is just absolutely crazy because it lets you once per turn pay 500 life points, and then you can normal summon a vampire monster in addition to your normal summoner set, even if this card leaves the field, and each time one of your vampire monsters inflicts damage to your opponent, you gain life points while they lose life points, effectively giving you that vampire ability, which is awesome. I love this card's effect. It helps out a lot. It gives like the deck what it should do, in my opinion, where you're basically taking life points away from your opponent while you're getting stronger with their life points. It's such a good card in this deck, giving you that additional normal summon, and I definitely recommend it as a 3 of. We then play 3 copies of Zombie World. Zombie World is a great card as well because it turns every monster on the field and in the graveyard into zombies, and neither player can tribute summon except for zombie monsters. This card is very helpful right now in the meta because it outs Floowandereeze, and it's just a fantastic card that just stops so many different plays, especially when your opponent needs a particular type and you turn them all into zombies. We then play 3 copies of Super Polymerization because comboed with Zombie World, this card literally can out anything in the game, which is really nice. I love this card combo with Zombie World because you can go into a really powerful fusion monster from the extra deck. So that's it for the spell cards. Let's get into the traps because we actually play a couple of traps in this deck. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Vampire Awakening and 2 copies of Vampire Domination. So this is a really interesting card. Both of these are very cool for the deck because Vampire Awakening lets you special summon a vampire monster from the deck but destroy it during the end phase. And also Vampire Domination has the ability that when your opponent activates a spell or trap card or a monster effect, while you control a vampire monster, negate the effect, and if you do, destroy that card. Then, if it was a monster card, you gain life points equal to the original attack, which is a great effect, essentially giving you an infernity barrier for the deck with a life point gain, which is just really, really good for this deck. Both of these are really good cards, and I really do like the Vampire Awakening as a one-of, because it can special summon cards out from the deck like your Vampire Familiar or your Vampire Retainer to give you searches as well, which is why I play it as a one-of. So, that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're playing a single copy of Vampire Sheridan. I have considered bumping this card up to 2, but right now I'm just playing it as a one-of. It's very easy to summon to your side of the field because if you use a monster with a level that was originally controlled by your opponent, you can treat it as a level 6, which is really good comboed with your copy of your Scarlet Scourge, because if it special summons a monster back to your side of the field, you can then overlay both your Scarlet Scourge and the monster that you took from your opponent into this card, which helps out a lot. And then once per turn, you can detach a material from this card and then target one card your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. And then once per turn, if a monster card is sent from the field to the graveyard to your opponent's graveyard by a card effect, or a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to your opponent's graveyard, you can detach a material from this card to special summon one of those monsters to the field in defense position. I have considered bumping this up to 2. I just don't know quite what I want to drop for the second copy, but it's still a great one-of right now. We then play a single copy of Crimson Knight Vampire Braum. Crimson Knight Vampire Braum is very easy to summon as well with your copy of Vampire Shadow. And what it does is you detach a material from this card to target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon that target to your side of the field. But if you do, only that monster can attack for the rest of the turn. And you only use each effect of this card once per turn. And then during the standby phase, after this card that you control is destroyed by an opponent's card, either by battle or by card effect, and sent to your graveyard, you can special summon this card in face-up defense, always coming back like a good zombie does. We then play a single copy of Dragon Necro Nether Soul Dragon. This card is a great super poly target comboed with your copy of Zombie World because it just requires 2 zombie monsters, and with Zombie World on the field, this card is a great target for super poly, being able to use literally any monster that your opponent has on the field. One copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, because you can use 2 dark monsters to fusion summon into this card, so it's very easy to summon in this deck as well. One copy of Sea Monster, because it is a great instant fusion and ready fusion target to summon to your field to go into any play that you need to go into, from link plays to synchro plays. This card has you covered. One copy of the level 2 Tuner Peacock from the extra deck. This card is really good as well because it's a tuner monster and it's a level 2. Vanity is just a great card to put in this deck because it is a level 2 tuner monster, letting you go for some really nice plays with some of your vampire monsters going into level 6s and even level 10 synchro monsters. We then play a single copy of the Baron. Baron is good as a one-of because you can go into this card very easily, but you don't have to play it. It doesn't end the deck if you don't play this card. You can change it out if you want to for Sun Saiga. That is another option for the level 10 Shiranui monster if you don't have this card. It's still a really good card though because it can once per turn target a card on the field and destroy it, and then once while face up on the field, when a card effect is activated, quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And you can only use the effect of this card once per turn, and then once per turn during this standby phase, you can target a level 9 or lower monster in the graveyard, return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon that monster, which is a very neat effect and helps out the deck a lot, but you can change it out for Sun Saiga if you want to. We then play a single copy of Beals. Beals is really good because you can summon this card in basically defense position and look at your opponent and go, okay, out it. And it's really hard to out because your opponent cannot destroy by battle or by card effects, so it is a little bit difficult to out. We then play a single copy of the Chaos Ruler. Chaos Ruler helps out a lot because it can send cards from your deck to the graveyard, and zombies do actually function very well when they're in the graveyard, go figure. But this card has the ability, if this card is synchro summoned, you can excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, and if you do, you get to add 1 light or dark monster from those 5 that you excavated to your hand, which helps out a lot because you can add basically any of your vampire monsters because they're all dark monsters. So this card comes in very handy, especially sending Mizukis to the graveyard. This card is just great in this deck because it helps your zombies function in the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Borreload Savage because you do link summon into your copy of Needle Fiber in this deck, so it's very easy to actually summon this card and give you additional negates. 1 copy of the Red Eyes Zombie Dragon. Red Eyes Zombie Dragon is a great card comboed with Zombie World because it gets absolutely humongous because it gains 100 attack and defense for each zombie monster on the field and in the graveyards, which is a great card effect. And when another zombie monster is destroyed by battle, you can special summon a zombie monster from either player's graveyard to your field. So you can actually summon this card and actually summon your copy of Vampire Sheridan by using this card to attack into an opponent's monster, and then summon it back to your field, and then main phase 2 go into Vampire Sheridan. One copy of Formula Synchron, because you can actually summon this card to your field to summon out your copy of Baron, and it lets you draw a card, which is really nice. One copy of Boral Sword to go through for OTKs. One copy of Crystron Needle Fiber, because it makes it really easy to go into your copy of Baron, and you can summon this card to your side of the field, and then during your opponent's turn, you can get rid of it and summon out your copy of Formula Synchron, getting you a draw, and then being able to use this, plus Baller Draw to go into your copy of your Baron, which is really good. And then a single copy of Vampire Sucker, because sometimes you need the suck, and this card is really good, because if you would tribute summon a monster that's a zombie monster, you can tribute a zombie monster your opponent controls, even though you do not control them, which is a great effect to be able to just tribute your opponent's monsters and turn your monsters essentially into kaijus with this card. And it helps out the deck a lot, because it also has the ability that you can target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your opponent's field, and it becomes a zombie monster, and if a zombie monster is special from either player's graveyard, you get to draw a card, which helps out the deck a lot. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play around with. I love the way that it plays. It summons out your opponent's monsters and uses them against them, which is super fun to be able to do, especially with the idea of the deck basically turning your opponent's monsters into vampires and using your opponent's life points to power you up with copies of Domain. This deck is one of the coolest zombie decks in the entire game, and it's just a super fun deck to play around with. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.